Wow, so this is how the night's gonna go.
Oh, it's gotta go fast. We gotta go. Anyway, good evening, everyone. The hour being 7 p.m. on Monday, May 9th, 2022. I'd like to call to order City of Laconia, the City Council meeting. Before we go any farther, though, I would ask Councilor Lippman if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Lippman. Council is joined in chambers by our recording secretary and city clerk and town city tax collector, Katie Gargano, and I'd ask you to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Here.
Counselor Susie,
I'm in Prattville, Alabama, on business alone in a hotel room.
Counselor Littman,
Present.
Counselor Haynes,
Here.
Counselor Hamel,
Present.
Counselor Felch,
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. Thank you very much. We're also joined at council table this evening by City Manager Scott Myers and IT being handled by City Finance Director Glenn Smith. Moving on to agenda item number 7. To the regular meeting minutes of April 25th, 2022. These minutes were distributed to the City Council on May 2nd, 2022. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Moving on to item 8, specifically 8A, it's a request by the Weirs Community Park Association to hold a parking fundraiser event at the Weirs Community Center and Weirs Community Park. Front and rear parking lots from June 10th through June 19th, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. in conjunction with the 2022 Laconia Motorcycle Week event. The Weirs Community Park Association is the benefactor of the event. City Council approval is being requested because this event is anticipating revenues above $2,000. A recommendation is being made by Liza Kelleher of the Parks and Rec that this request be approved. The Parks and Recreation Commission has approved this request conditioned upon further approval from the City Council. As I said, this is an annual event. So I'll be looking for a motion right now. I move to approve the request by the Weirs Community Park Association to hold a parking fundraiser event at the Weirs Community Center and Weirs Community Park front and rear parking lots in conjunction with the 2022 Laconia Motorcycle Week event from June 10th through June 19th, 2022, from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those, no, we're going to have to go roll call here, aren't we? I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes,
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 8B, the appointment subcommittee met on May 5th, 2022, and interviewed 2 candidates for appointment or reappointment to the city's boards and commissions. The appointment subcommittee strongly recommends the appointment of the following individuals for the terms shown. Ruth O'Hara, requesting appointment as an alternate member of the Conservation Commission, serving the remainder of a term expiring at the end of August 2024. And Tara Shore, requesting reappointment as a regular member of the Historic District Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2025. Looking for a motion to move that the City Council approves the appointment or reappointment of candidates to the city's boards and commissions as presented and recommended by the appointment subcommittee. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
yes,
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes. That's 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 9, which is citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. If anyone here in the chamber would like to speak to a matter not on tonight's agenda, now would be the appropriate time. Certainly, if you're online and would like to comment to an item, if you'd like to make a comment in regards to a matter not on the agenda, raise your hand. Now would be the appropriate time. Moving on to item number 13, which is public hearings. Public hearing 13A. Katie, thanks for putting agenda item 13A at the top here.
You're
We're
welcome.
moving in the right direction. This is great. Thank you. This is a public hearing for ordinance 2022-2221 to amend City Code Chapter 221 Vehicles and Traffic regarding increasing the parking fees on Lakeside Avenue and at Endicott Rock Park. Notice of this public hearing was made available on the April 26, 2022 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, offices of SAU number 30, Laconia Community Center, and the Laconia Public Library on April 27, 2022. So I would like to open the public hearing right now at 7:06 PM. If anyone here in the chambers would like to speak to this matter or online, that would be the appropriate time.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I have a comment.
please.
We're reading an ordinance that's going to be changed. That This is a public meeting, but there is nowhere in here that says what we are going to raise the fees to.
So I'm under the recommendation. I could have read this and should have read this. Action on this item may be taken up under unfinished business. When you go to the item, item number 22A, the increase is right there.
Yeah, I know it is, but here it doesn't say what it is. Public can comment about the price.
I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:07 PM. And so noted, Counselor Hamel. Thank you. Moving along to item number 14, 15, I will not make a mayor's report this evening. Move right along to council comments. Any council comments from Counselor Haynes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the city manager. All the welcome signs to the city have been updated. My only comment is that now the one on Court Street, the woods has been lost, so we're kind of need a backdrop of the sign. They kind of ruined the back of it when they took all the trees out and everything else. So, but anyways, all the signs look great.
Thank you. I'll pass
The
that on
only
to
thing
staff.
I did have a couple of comments from a couple of businesses on the in the south end, especially on South Main Street. Is there a possibility we could look into moving the one that's on the corner of 107? Because their concern was as you come down 106, you really don't see the sign. And their concern was maybe it could be moved so that, where 107 and 106 come near Sherwin-Williams, that might be and I know you'd have to put something on both sides, but anyway, it was a comment and to me, it was worth sharing.
Okay, we can take a look. I think the location where it's currently at, we might be at on state right away. We're probably
okay.
restricted as to where we can be, but let's see if there's another location. But you're right, we probably have to double side it at that point, which we'll take a look and get back to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other council comments? Counselor Hamel?
Thank you. Scott, just wondering if you could, with Public Works, look into I know we did them here, the lampshades that we changed here.
Mhm.
They look beautiful and they look great now that the posts are being painted. But I was up at the Weirs, over the weekend and I noticed not the streetlights that we put up, but there's the same exact poles up there with looks like the same shades on the boardwalk. And then there's some down on the docks.
Okay.
Could we look into seeing what it would be to replace those?
We can take a look and put a number for it.
Okay. And my other comment is I had a chance to do the Mount Washington shakedown cruise over the weekend. And it wasn't over the weekend. It was Thursday. I'm sorry. And I just want to say the cruise went very well. Scott was there along with some other city people, and what a marvelous job the owners of the Mount Washington do. and that it's a true gem here for the Lakes region and for the state. So very proud of what they're doing with that, and hopefully they'll get a lot of support over the summer and people go out and use it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? How about liaison reports? Do we have any liaison reports this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 19, which is citizens request to comment on current agenda items. If you're in the chamber and would like to speak to current agenda items, now would be the appropriate time. Sorry about that, Councilor Susie. I neglected to look on the screen. Did you raise your hand and did you want to speak previously? Okay.
No more. Thank you.
Sorry about that. All right. Or if you're online and would like to speak to a matter that a current agenda item, now would be the appropriate time. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 20, which is the city manager's report. I'll turn it over to Scott Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One item that's not included in the agenda, but it was a piece of legislation that the council was actively following and communicating on, was Senate Bill 249, the short-term rental bill. As you recall, that had a minor amendment, which really, in our opinion, didn't do a whole lot. Came out of the Senate on a voice vote that passed, went over to the House, went to committee, and it was on I forget the exact number, but 21-2, something along those lines, a recommendation out of committee to refer to interim study, and the full House on a voice vote also followed that path. So that bill is basically dead for this legislative session. Obviously, it could resurface next year, but as it stands now, our ordinance, which we think strikes a good balance, is in force and will remain in force for at least another year at this point. So for all of you who reached out to members of our delegation or went down and testified, thank you for your efforts. It does make a difference. Moving to the financial and operational trends report, which can be found in your agenda packet. Top of the page, building permit reports. We've rolled over to the start of the new assessing year. So we can't sit there and say we've got a $47 million number or $49 million number because April 1st kicked off a new year. So $4 million. Certainly not quite as robust as last year when it was almost double that right out of the gate, but certainly when you compare it to 2 years ago at about 1.5 million, again, we're off to a good start and we continue to see a lot of activity. And it's not only on new construction, there's some demolition and rebuild, there's additions going on, but some of the items that don't show up in the value are just updating electrical, updating wiring, installing a generator, installing solar panels, just the amount of electrical permits that are pulled, people doing siding and roofing and slider doors, which again, don't necessarily equate to new value we're going to capture, but there's a lot of small projects going along in addition to the big projects that are happening. So very busy time for our staff who are out in the field doing the inspections. Fire and rescue call, again, speaks for itself. And when you look at the numbers for April this year versus the first full month of COVID 2 years ago in 2020, you can see that we're up, back to the numbers that we were at in 2019. So fire continues to be busy. I need to report out, and I may be off by one on the number, but at this time we currently have 6 and possibly 7 vacancies in our fire department right now. We've had a couple of retirements. We've had folks who have gone to other departments, maybe for more money, maybe for departments that are less busy, or maybe a department that's not running an ambulance. And that doesn't even include the SAFER grant that we've applied for that we should potentially be hearing on at the end of this month. I think some of the announcements will come out of the federal level on some of the SAFER grants. So it certainly is going to drive overtime. On the flip side, it's, we're not going to be paying an extra health insurance, but we're paying overtime to fill some of those vacancies. So it's a serious concern. So some of the steps that the council has made over the years about, doing hiring bonuses or doing lateral transfers, those are good tools to have in the box, but they really haven't driven any new candidates. I think we've got 1 or 2, the chief let me know, that are potentially in the pipeline, but we're struggling there. And speaking with Chief Canfield, he's got a couple of vacancies that he thinks with some folks graduating college and stuff, and then off to the academy. But again, we've got the grant positions that came through the prevention enforcement and treatment Department of Justice grant that we spoke about a month or 2 ago with Eric Adams transitioning to kind of roll that out statewide. There's a few grant funded positions there. So when we talked with the superintendent earlier tonight about challenges with electricians or building trades or plumbing or wherever, we're seeing these in real time here in the city. So just kind of sharing that with you. And, we're actively recruiting. We're at the college. We're going places. To give you an example, the police department, and I'll probably butcher this a little bit because I'm not the technology guy, but went to some podcast and or Sirius XM satellite type of radios where they can geocache certain areas targeting with their advertisements. So it's not just an ad goes out and says, we're hiring police officers, but they can target some colleges and universities that maybe have a criminal justice program or a homeland security program, and they can get the listens and the hits there in an area, in a demographic that they're targeting versus, having it go out and hit a retirement home where you're not going to draw anybody. That's a sort of extreme example, but it's interesting on these types of satellite and podcasts and things where they can bring it down and really try to target people within a state, not just it goes out on WBZ or the Hawk or wherever, and just whoever happens to be listening to it here's the type of thing. So we're trying to be creative, but I just wanted to share with you that we are having these challenges in the public safety side. Back to my report, moving down on the public assistance data. As we've reported a few times, the trend was higher, especially when you looked at the November, December, January timeframe. By the time some of the support programs through the COVID and the pandemic and the renter assistance and the stay of eviction expired, but we indicated through some of the grants, the COVID CDBG grants the city has received, that we were expecting reimbursement. So I draw your attention down to the second line from the bottom, that even though our gross relief was $35,000, we have gotten reimbursement through that grant of $23,000. So you can see the net impact there on welfare. And Glenn and his team continue to do a very good job and work with a lot of our partner agencies to really, something we can't do, we look to refer and make sure folks can get services that they need. Police activity at the top of the second page. We'll move down to property tax collection. Again, for the 2021 warrant, we're at 99.25% collected, the highest number going back all the way to 2014. We continue to be strong on motor vehicle registrations. Again, we budgeted 3.27 million this year versus an estimate of 3.15 million last year. And we're still running ahead of pace. And in terms of dollars, we're about $70,000 ahead of last year's pace, and last year's pace was a record number for us. So we continue to be very busy with motor vehicles as well. You can see the overtime by department. I spoke at this a month ago, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. It's good to see the activity request numbers on the Parks and Rec facility use data going back up again. Again, COVID dropped those numbers significantly, and we're starting to have things, activities in clubhouses, the Easter egg hunts, coming back with summer camp this year and those types of activities. So it's good to see that trend there. No grievances pending at this point, so we'll hopefully keep that trend going. You can see the impact fee revenue. Again, as I mentioned a month ago, we had one development prepaid a decent amount of money before the fee increase went into effect, but we're holding that money now on the impact fees. You can see the one transfer the school made out, and that was following up on a question Councilor Lippman had that I think I answered. That was the only one that we were even coming close to having to spend down before that 7-year use it or lose it type of window came in. So everything else we're very solid on. You can see our current balances in the various trust accounts as well as the TIFs. Boating season, we're not quite as strong out of the gate as last year, but at 44% of budget through a couple of the quieter months. So I'm sure as the boat dealers kick into gear and we get the nice 80-degree weather like we're anticipated to get later on this week, people will get the itch to get out there and get boats registered. The billing history for EMS, again at the bottom of the page, compared to the prior years on the top of the next page. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that small April salting that we did for winter maintenance, I'm going to go on a limb and say that's it for this fiscal year. Happy to answer any questions anybody may have on these or anything else.
Thank you, Scott. Seeing nothing. Okay, so let's move on to item number 21, which is our new business. Scott, I'd ask you to sort of take the lead on this, which is a request to approve a tentative agreement with the Public Works Department employees, local number 534, ASME Council 93.
Okay, so this is one of our 4 collective bargaining units. This is AFSCME. A majority of Public Works employees, but not all of them. These are the equipment operators, a couple of mechanics, drivers, and the 16 members, I believe, that are in this union. The total impact of this for first year costs, which is the role of the council in voting on this, is listed there at $73,290. If you approve it tonight, I'm happy to run through the details with you. But right now, it'll be pending the council vote. You have been briefed on this, all of you, and say if it does receive an affirmative vote tonight, I'm happy to run through the details, not only here publicly, but for the public, obviously the public as well.
So right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move that the city council approve the tentative agreement with the Public Works Department employees, local number 534, AFSCME Council 93 for the period from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. So made by Counselor Hamel, seconded by Counselor Felch. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
With 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 21B, which is the discussion of New Hampshire Electric Co-op announcement.
Mr. Mayor, can we get the briefing on the contract?
You want to give us the brief?
I can give you the briefing now if you like.
Sure. I'm sorry. I thought we were doing it beforehand. No one wanted it. My apologies.
I can't give it beforehand because if
Of
it was a
course.
negative vote, then we're back in
Right.
negotiations again. So this parallels quite a bit of what the council and the school board approved on the teachers' contract. So this is a 3-year contract running from this July 1 through 3 years ending on June 30th, 25. There are some changes to health insurance. We are eliminating what is our more expensive of the 2 plans and changing to a little bit less expensive plan with a higher deductible. So there still are 2 plans available for employees. We are contributing dollars for each year of the contract, depending on which plan employees are on, to a health reimbursement account to help offset some of the impact of the higher deductibles they would be facing. We've also introduced a dental plan that we will be contributing 80% of a single premium cost, 60% for a 2-person cost, and 50% of a family cost. On one of the health insurance plans that the employees are currently paying 10% on, they'll be increasing to 11% cost share on July 1 for those who enroll in that plan, and a 12% cost share in year 2 for those who are on that plan. The other thing that we did with this union is the COLAs are fixed, if you will, for 3 years. The first year is a true fixed number at 2.5%. The second and third year would be whatever our tax cap number is that the city uses within the budget. But if it falls, but not to exceed a high of 3% and not to exceed a low of 1%. So if the number falls somewhere from 1 to 3, that would be the number of the COLA. If it fell higher than 3, the employees would get a 3 in this union would get a 3% COLA. If it was below 1, they would get a 1% COLA. Speaking of some of the hiring challenges, when we looked at our starting pay for laborers, truck drivers, light equipment operators, heavy equipment operators, and seeing what some of the paving companies and some of the contractors and some of the construction companies are paying for similar types of staff, we felt we were significantly underpaying in the sense of being able to attract people at a starting rate and be able to keep them here. We do require the overwhelming majority of our folks have a commercial driver license B, and we have a couple who have a commercial driver's license A, and those are certainly in demand out in the world. So we have agreed with the union to eliminate the lowest 2 steps of a 9-step pay scale. So current steps 1 and 2, meaning somebody comes in and starts with the city, and most often they're starting on step 1. On their anniversary a year later, they'd move to step 2. We're eliminating those 2 grades, and what was currently step 3 will become the new step 1. Everything else will be renumbered, and we're adding 2 top steps. So there still will be 9 steps in the pay grade, and the differential on the top 2 steps that we're adding is a 3% increase for each year between the 2 years. So we feel that this will help us attract, recruit, and more importantly, retain. Majority of our folks have been with us a while, but we seem to have been kind of turning over in a couple of positions where they've been with us just for a year or two. So collectively with the package, we think by offering dental, offering a little better starting wage, having a 3-year deal, which offers security, and they know they've got a fixed COLA in year 1 and where it's going to potentially fall in years 2 and 3 is very important. The other thing that I believe the union was very pleased with, because it showed that the city and the city council was going to make an investment in staff, was we allow up to 2 people to be what's referred to as a step 45 on our pay grade. And that requires them to have the commercial driver's license A, which is a step above what most of them have with the B. Again, we limited it to 2, but there's a significant out-of-pocket expense of about $3,400 to go and take the class, and it takes 3 weeks of class time. So we put a value of the $3,400 and lost productivity of us having an employee sitting in a classroom as opposed to doing projects in the city. And collectively, we agreed there's a $6,000 value to that. So if one of the employees who's eligible to be the next one in line to pick up the CDLA and wants to do it, we will pay for the class. We will let them go for the 3 weeks of class time. And we borrowed languages in the police union contract of what the police department does when they send somebody to the police academy, which has a cost to it, that employee comes back and guarantees they're going to stay with the city for X number of years so the city can recoup the benefit of the investment that we've made in them. Same thing works here, that they'll have to come back and work with us for a period of 4 years. So they can't just go out and get a CDLA license and go down the road and start a new job the week after they've got it. So there's a payback schedule prorated over those 48 months for that $6,000. But again, these are employees who have already been with us 10 years. They're running a crew. They've got good performance reviews. They've had no preventable accidents. These are the types of folks that we want to be making the investment into to keep and let them grow with us. So I'm very pleased that we have this deal with AFSCME. They work hard. They do a great job, and I'm excited that we've got this agreement that will begin with them with continuation starting July 1.
Scott, how many employees does this cover?
This covers 16, I believe.
Any questions? Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much. Nice job. Moving along to item number 21B right now, which is discussion of New Hampshire Electric Co-op announcement regarding herbicide treatment on transmission line 124 on Layton Avenue. At their April 20th, 2022 meeting, the Conservation Commission discussed the announcement received from the New Hampshire Electric Co-op and its subcontractor consultant, Vegetation Control Service, Inc., regarding application of herbicides to undesirable vegetation growing within the power line rights of way corridors, specifically on transmission line 124 on Layton Avenue. Copy of the announcement is attached to our documents this evening. And treatments are scheduled to commence on or about June 15th, 2022. The Conservation Commission noted that a number of homeowners in the Layton Avenue area are concerned for their private wells and the lake's water quality. The commission asked the city council to not support the application of herbicide pesticides along the transmission lines with impacts to private wells and shorelands, and to not allow New Hampshire Electric Co-op to proceed with this herbicide treatment as outlined in the announcement dated April 1st, 2022. Right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move that the city council endorses the Conservation Commission's position on opposing the application of herbicide pesticides along transmission lines with impacts to private wells and shorelands, and to not allow New Hampshire Electric Co-op to proceed with the herbicide treatment as outlined in the announcement dated April 1st, 2022. Is there a motion? Will anyone make that motion? Seeing no motion,
I'll make the motion so we can at least have a discussion.
so made by Counselor Littman, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on the motion that's on the table?
I'm just concerned about what's the alternative if they don't do this, so that electrical services are not interrupted for other people in the city as a result of this.
So I believe this is the main area that the electric co-op runs transmission lines here. The majority, overwhelming majority of the lines in the city are through Eversource and maintained. So this one area, and again, as the Conservation Commission pointed out, these are areas not on city water and they're along the shoreline. So I can't tell you specifically the alternatives, but it would be a more organic, a less chemical type of use. I can't speak to whether the vegetation they're trying to control in some cases could be handled by bringing in, goats or sheep, as has done in some areas. I don't know what the alternatives are for not doing it and whether they would just leave it in its state. And to, I think your concern, Council Lippman, it would just grow and be impacting people. I would have that conversation with the folks at the co-op to say, what is plan B if the council's not supportive of plan A?
Can we maybe table this till we understand I understand and appreciate the people who would be affected by this, but just want to make sure that we understand the whole picture before we take a vote on it.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if Dean Anson, as the chair of the Conservation Commission, would have something further to add beyond what I'm privy to at this point.
Councilor Cheney.
Well, I just would ask that we also get some information about a state of New Hampshire permit 044 and what that entails. I mean, has the state reviewed this and said it's safe, or it just seems to me reasonable to know what that permitting process entails.
Councilor Haynes.
Yeah, just to go along with Councilor Cheney, I'm not a chemist, but I'd like to know what they're going to use.
Go right ahead, Dean.
I'm Dean Anson. I live on Layton Avenue North, and thank you for entertaining this idea. There are about 80 or 90 houses that have private wells on Layton Avenue North and South. In addition, there are some other houses along Collins Brook Road where this transmission line goes, as well as Dennis Avenue. So my concern, I have several concerns. One is, what's the impact going to be on my private well? And if there is an impact on my private well, who's going to be responsible for dealing with that impact? Is that going to be my responsibility? Secondly, there are probably 9 to a dozen intermittent streams that flow off the hill between Meredith Center Road and Layton Avenue, and those streams go directly into Lake Winnisquam. There are ponds and vernal pools up there also. So I'm concerned that, and I looked up the material safety data sheets for the 2 chemicals that they said they're going to apply. One of them is Kernite, Kernite, and the other one is Escort, ESCORT. And both of those say that they are they're not harmful to wildlife. They don't talk about vegetation. Obviously, it's going to be harmful to vegetation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be applying it to stumps where there may be a secondary growth after they've cut the trees down. So these chemicals are from areas on the other side of the United States, from Death Valley and from other areas of California. So these are not chemicals that are native to New Hampshire. Anytime we bring a chemical in that's not native, I have a concern. So I think an alternative could be goats or sheep. Another would be to have, in lieu of a man walking, trimming, or applying the herbicide, have them trim whatever growth comes out of those stumps, because that's what they want to do. They want to control the growth out of the stumps. I just think that applying chemicals, in particular herbicides and pesticides, in the city is not a good idea from an environmental standpoint. So if these chemicals get into Winnisquam and it affects vegetation, what's it going to do to the vegetation, the native vegetation in the lake? I mean, we have fought to get Lake Winnisquam back to a usable resource that started back in the 70s when they built the wastewater treatment plant down in Franklin. So I think that there's got to be another alternative to applying herbicides. And so,
Thank you very much, Dean.
thank you.
Go right ahead.
Can I ask him a question?
Sure.
How are they going to apply it? Because it doesn't really say.
They
They're
said,
going to walk around with a tank
right,
and it's just on the stumps, not the general vegetation, or is it everything?
I don't know.
It suggests in here that it's, I forget the term, but undesirable vegetation. So it's not everything. They're not going to just spray the right of way. They're going to spray undesirable vegetation, which I would assume, and these are answers we probably ought to get, I would assume it means things that could grow to a height that would bother the transmission lines. They're not worried about grass. Grass isn't going to hurt anything.
Is
So
this
I just
ju-
think we need more
Is
answers.
this just
before-
late now? Just late now?
I don't think it is just late.
It is, it's this one specific line that's presented to you on the map.
Right, so Layton Avenue and that, I'm sorry.
Where is it on the
Yes,
map?
please do.
'Cause I don't follow it.
Can I make a
Counselor Lippman, go right ahead.
just make a suggestion? Understand the concern. Can we ask that you work with the manager to contact New Hampshire Electric Cooperative to see whether there is, rather than just saying no, to find out whether there is an alternative and to better understand what's going on here? Because I think while I fully appreciate what you're raising as concerns, I don't think we have enough information just to say no.
Well, I think we ought to also contact Vegetation Control Services, who's proposing to put down this.
So I'm a certified well operator. And I work with New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services all the time, taking tests for different chemicals, because we have wells at Mountain View
Sure.
Apartments. I want to know what New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services stance is on this.
Isn't the Division of Pesticide Control part of that?
It might be a part of it, but the DES is the ones that control all the regulations. So I'd like to hear what they have to say.
So I guess my suggestion is we understand, we have, if we want to say a motion of concern, I think we say that, but just not just to say no until we know what the options and the alternatives are.
So what, so
We have a motion to table.
So maybe a motion to table would be in order, but I think while it's on the table, we'd like to direct the city manager to reach out to Electric Co-op as well as DES to find out, answer a couple of those questions for us.
We will do that.
Okay.
I think we
And,
need to know how, if it leaches also,
and I think we should probably let the co-op know that we're completing some due diligence here.
I think we'll be
right?
reaching out to them to ask them what the alternative is. If we said no herbicides, what's the secondary plan beyond that? And then we can do the diligence on the specific chemicals. And is it, as Councilor Hamel just said, spraying everywhere? Or as Councilor Cheney said, are we focusing on areas of trees and sucker shoots off of those stumps that are going to potentially grow and be impacting the power lines?
Right. So I think we just want to make sure that while we're still studying this, they don't decide to act on it and come in and do the work, right?
We've got about to a June 15th date
Right.
in the background.
I want to
too,
put them on
so
notice anyway to let them know.
it will be our first
Hold
call.
off a bit here. Thank you. So motion to table made by Counselor Cheney, Lippman, seconded by Counselor Cheney, excuse me. And ask clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Lippman,
Yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes. 6 votes in the affirmative. That matter is tabled. Thank you. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 21C, which is city employees covered by the wage and compensation plan. Scott, if you'd like to step us through that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have what's referred to as a wage and compensation plan, which is for folks who don't fall under any of our 4 collective bargaining agreements. The 4 agreements we do have are with firefighters, with police officers up through detective, with the AFSCME group, which I just mentioned, and then SEA, which is more white collar clerical workers that are in numerous buildings, most in City Hall, but Parks and Recreation, a couple in Public Works, 1, maybe 2 in Fire Department, I believe. So anybody who's non-union would be middle management, library, anybody above the grade of detective and police. Those types of folks are covered by the wage and compensation plan. So in trying to keep the folks who are not covered by collective bargaining on a similar path that we do for the folks who are, the city council has always been supportive of major initiatives, meaning wages, COLAs, and what we offer in terms of health insurance. So this particular memo that's attached on the second page was posted as was required in all city buildings at least 10 days before I bring it to you. You have on your agenda tonight, you do not have to take any action on this if you choose not to for up to 30 days. If you take no action after 30 days, this proposal would go into effect by default. I've encouraged, and the council's always been very supportive of trying to, again, be in support of our employees, to keep everybody on a level footing, that you've always positively endorsed this as opposed to it letting it go into effect kind of by default. So this one is even a little simpler than what I just described, but it mirrors what I just described. So there are 3 wage adjustments. This is a 3-year proposal, 3 wage adjustments. The first one is a fixed number of 2.5% as of the first day of the pay period, which is July 4th of this year. And then again, the same, either it's the CPI number we use for the tax cap, no higher than the 3%, no lower than the 1% in years 2 or 3. This brings the same changes in on the health insurance, eliminating the more expensive plan, introducing a higher deductible plan in its place, contributions to the health reimbursement accounts that I went over when I explained the AFSCME group, and then introducing the dental plan at the exact same cost share that I did, 80% for single, 60% for 2-person, and 50% for family. So that's the entire makeup of this, but this would be effect for anybody who's not covered by a collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you, Scott. So I guess what perhaps do right now is look for a motion to approve the wage and compensation plan as presented. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Any further discussion on this right now? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 21D, which is the Health Trust Inc. application and membership agreement. The city will be offering dental insurance coverage to its employees as outlined in the attached Health Trust Inc. application and membership agreement effective July 1st, 2022. In connection with the agreement, the council is asked to authorize the city manager to sign the certificate of authorizing the resolution on behalf of the city. I'll be looking for a motion right now to move that the city council authorize the city manager to sign the certificate of authorizing resolution in connection with the Health Trust Inc. application and membership agreement as presented. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Cheney. Any further discussion? Counselor Littman.
And so far as this certificate goes, and so far as we have open negotiations, this does not oblige us to offer the benefit unless there's an agreement in those other contracts. Is that correct?
Correct. So any collective bargaining units that are not under contract of July 1 are under the current language of their contract, which does not include dental at that point. So they would not be eligible to go on the dental plan until they were under a contract with the city that was approved by the city council.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes.
If I could add one more thing, Mr. Mayor.
Please do.
Under state law, retirees who retire with the city are eligible to be on municipal health insurance. Dental is considered a health insurance. The city does not subsidize or make any co-payments, cost share, I shouldn't say co-payments, cost sharing on the health insurance, nor would we be making any cost sharing on the dental plan, but it would be eligible, those folks would be eligible to sign up for it if they wanted to.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 21E. Relative to a proposed land swap and partial termination of lease rights between the state of New Hampshire and the city of Laconia. Scott, would you just 10,000 foot view on this, or would you want me to read it? I'm not sure what we
No,
can.
let me give you a 10,000 foot view first. So we all know that the state school property is being marketed for the 200+ acre campus and is out being advertised by the state. We know that as part of that, they've got the 911 building as well as the Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid building, that their desire is to move that off of the site. So it's a cleaner site without any active operations on the site when they determine a future use of that property. So the state has approached the city about looking to do a swap of parcels that we have through what was a 99-year lease in the early 2000s in conjunction with the creation of Robbie Mills Park and a couple of parcels. So the easiest way to describe it, that I'll get back to the first page, is to go to the very last page of your agenda packet where you've got 2 yellow highlights. Towards the top of the page with the highlighted yellow number 3, that's the parcel directly across the street from Robbie Mills Park, across Meredith Center Road, not across Eastman Road. So it's on the opposite side on the corner, basically, of Lane and Meredith Center. That's about 7 acres. We've had a land lease on that going back to the early 2000s. Have never done anything with it, have no future intentions at this point. That's where the state, at their expense, would like to relocate E911 and also construct the building for Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid. And we're hearing at no expense to the 38 or the 40 communities that are part of that, that the state would construct it, move the operations there, and therefore free up space on the state school property. They're asking the city if we will, in essence, give up the remaining time of the lease that we have in exchange. If you look on that same sheet down to highlighted yellow number 1 on the corner of Parade Road and Old North Main Street, that's about a 10-acre parcel sitting directly across the street from the state school property. Excuse me. We would own that property free and clear. We would have title to it. There would be no restrictions of it can only be used for recreation or haying or anything like that. The only thing is, at the very tip of the point where those roads intersect, there's a little bit of a pump station and water infrastructure that the state would need to maintain. More than likely, once the state school property got developed, my assumption is that would be irrelevant at the time and would be taken offline and go away. But we would do that land swap. So the rest of the agreement highlights basically the legal lease of identifying those 2 by map and tax map and block number, and basically having the city council relinquish its right. We're basically saying that we, under our city code of 183.8, that the parcel we would be giving up rights to, we have no future use identified, so therefore it is surplus, and this would require a 2/3 vote of the city council. If approved here, it still needs to go to the state and be placed on the agenda for governor and council meeting. I'm told if it is approved tonight, I believe there's a placeholder there that potentially we could be on May 18th, wherever. I may be off a day or 2, but basically in 10 days, we could be on their agenda, assuming this is approved tonight. I know there's concerns about parking at Robbie Mills. This has nothing to do with where the parking is currently located. That would be a discussion, as I mentioned, for a different day with whoever's going to come in and develop that parcel on how the city can maintain some access to parking on the 200-acre site up there. So happy to answer any questions.
Counselor Hamel.
I'm disappointed that parking wasn't included in this, because this is where that should have been in this document, I think. Because I mean, now you're going to deal with somebody that's going to buy the land, and no, you can't have it. Where if it was in this, we would have a foothold to get something from that for that parking area.
I think what the state is trying to do, in my opinion, is to clean this up so that there aren't other uses. Additionally, if you read the language of the deed somewhere back in the 80s, the water department had an easement right smack dab in the middle of the site to house a water tank or a water tower. And I reached out to the water department and they're not sure. I'm thinking maybe it was back around the time South Dam was being developed and they thought that might be a site to put a water tank or tower. I'm just guessing at that. Seems to be the same time frame. I can't imagine why else we would be seeking an easement. I really think the state is looking to clean this up so that it's as clean of surface obstructions or easements or leases or anything on it as to not inhibit somebody coming in. To say that we've got to deal with someone new is correct, but they've also got to deal with us, and it's encouraged in the agreement to come and speak with the city about what they're looking to do there, how it fits in with our master planning of that site, if you will. Remember, there's the performance overlay district on top of that, but that's not a guarantee that they get that. Right now, it's zoned RR1 and RR2. So we do have a very strong seat at the table during the zoning planning board process that I am confident we can identify what the needs are for parking. It's not that great. It could be that it's a use up there that is a daytime use, and at nighttime that parking lot doubles as something else. But the state's trying to clean this up. They would not accept us adding a restriction to it when they're trying to remove restrictions, if it will.
Yeah, well, I think everybody around this table has seen things that we voted on. If it's not in writing, it's not going to happen. The other thing with the mutual aid and the 911, I would think they got to keep that building operating while they're constructing the other one. Are they going to fund the equipment for both of those at the same time? Because like I say, you can't shut one down and not have the other one going.
Councilor Cheney can certainly speak to the redundancy of the 911. Certainly, we can't shut down Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid. I don't know the age of the equipment in there, but I'm assuming they would be outfitting it to make it operational on the day that we flip the switch and move from point A to point B.
If I might add, as it relates to 911, the facility in Concord could handle the whole state during a 1, 2, 3 day transition. As far as mutual aid goes, I'm not positive, but I suspect that Concord Mutual Aid could probably take over for Lakes Region for that short period of time so that equipment could be moved. I'd also say, I don't mean to tell the current director what he should do, but about every 5 years, you have to replace all the equipment in the 911 center. I mean, computers running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they wear out, you got to replace them. So the smart thing would be to use the money that's stockpiled to replace equipment, to go ahead and do the same thing, to replace the equipment in the new facility. So I think that's probably not a serious concern. Not for us to worry about, but what do we do about all these other regional dispatch centers that aren't getting new buildings out of the deal?
I'm just wondering for the mutual aid, I heard Scott say they're going to build the building.
Yep.
So what happens to the rest of it? I mean, nothing was mentioned about equipment going in there, correct?
The safety commissioner has spoken a couple of times on the record with groups and saying our intention is to build a new mutual fire aid center and not have it cost the communities anything. And he said that publicly more than once.
Okay.
It would be suicide for them not to do it properly, believe me.
And I know I saw this in an email or release, but with, because there's a lot of, it's called silly season in the legislature right now where things are getting attached to bills. I think I've read somewhere that there was an amendment that also allowed state ARPA funds to be used in the relocation of the 911 and the Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid building, if need be, as an authorized use. And while that has not, I believe, either been concurred with the other house, I forget which chamber it happened, it would still need to be concurred or go to a committee of conference, and the governor would still have to sign it once it's enrolled. But I am fairly confident that was an amendment that was passed in the tail end of last week somewhere. So it's not solid by any stretch, but at least it gave them another opportunity to use funds towards this process.
So this person said this publicly, which is good, but could we transfer that to writing?
No,
No.
no,
Counselor,
no, no,
I don't
They're-
care
no.
if it's in here, but.
They're trying to clean this up so they can
I'm
actively
saying
market and
this
do a great thing.
separate Paper that's.
The mayor and I were on some conference calls with some high-ranking state folks, and we asked other questions along the way, and they basically said, we're going to do it right, but this is what we're willing to offer on the deal. And I think we both left a phone call and conversations feeling that we were in a good place. Mr. Mayor, I don't want to speak for you, but
I was very satisfied. Certainly, when I became aware that the 911, a mutual fire aid was going to be, it was proposed to be moved onto property that the city had a lease on. I thought, well, if the state wants the city to break the lease on their behalf, I think we should have something in return. And this was the request that I made to Commissioner of Administrative Services, and he said yes. So I don't think we shot low and got it. I think this will inure to the great benefit of the city of Laconia by taking possession, ownership of those 10 acres at 106 and Old North Main Street. I mean, I think it's a good opportunity for the city. Is it still a lot of loose ends on the state school property? And there are people who are saying, or giving their word. I'd rather have it in writing too, but I also don't want to blow up a deal that I think is really, really good for the city. So if we see if we can get a motion going, and we can certainly entertain any more questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you to read your highlighted yellow
Yeah.
into the record for us, please.
So I will say that legal counsel has advised that the city council follow the process outlined in chapter 183-8 of the city's code, which has been attached, to surrender its lease, terminate its easement, and release the covenants pursuant to RSA 183-8 parentheses capital A. Copies of all documents related to this request are attached. I hereby certify that the city has no present or reasonably foreseeable use for the property rights, and they are surplus. Should the council agree that the property rights are surplus and eligible for sale, it should determine if an appraisal is necessary, and if not, authorize the city manager to finalize the negotiations. That being in the record right now, and we could now propose the motion, I would suggest. So right now, be looking for a motion to move to approve resolution 2022-07 relative to a proposed land swap and partial termination of lease rights between the state of New Hampshire and the city of Laconia, and to declare the city's property located at tax map 292, block 153, lot 3 as surplus property. I further move to authorize the city manager to execute any and all documents related to this matter. So,
Missed a prior motion.
so the first motion would be, I would, first motion is I move to waive a reading of resolution 2022-07 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Phelps, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. I will read this again just to make sure that we're clear. Looking for a second motion to move to approve resolution 2022-07 relative to a proposed land swap and partial termination of lease rights between the state of New Hampshire and the city of Laconia, and to declare the city's property located at tax map 292, block 153, lot 3 as surplus property. I further move to authorize the city manager to execute any and all documents related to this matter. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion right now? Councilor Littman.
Speaking to the lease sort of trade, if you will, I think the concern that Councilor Hamel raised about just making sure that we have enough leverage to make sure that our interest in Robbie Mills is subsequently, I think I've heard the manager say, and I think the mayor back him up, that given what has to go through potentially planning and zoning for the property, that you feel that the city has enough interest in this to be able to effectuate so that we don't lose the full use of Robbie Mills is what I'm hearing. Is that correct?
I think we're in a strong position when it comes to the current zoning and then the performance overlay.
Any further questions or comments? Counselor Felch.
I would like to also say, if we don't do this and they sell the property, then 911 and mutual aid is going to be moved at our own expense. So I mean, it's a good deal.
So I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes.
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That satisfies the 2/3 vote of the council relative to this matter, and that motion passes. Moving on to item number 22, under unfinished business. This is ordinance 2022-221 to amend city code chapter 221 vehicles and traffic regarding increasing the parking fees on Lakeside Avenue and at Endicott Rock Park. As indicated earlier, this was subject to public hearing earlier. I don't believe we had any public comment on it. At the city council meeting of April 25th, 2022, the council voted to change the proposed parking fee to $2 an hour on Lakeside Avenue and $2.50 an hour at Endicott Rock Park, and to leave the amount that goes into the general fund at the existing $25,000. The council also requested that another public hearing be held at the May 9th, 2022 council hearing, which we completed earlier this evening. All Lakeside Avenue parking revenue goes to the general fund. The first $25,000 of the revenue from Endicott Rock Park goes to the general fund. The remainder goes to an account for beach refurbishments. The parking fee collection period begins on Saturday before Memorial Day, which is May 28th this year. Public Works estimates that the increase of fees on Lakeside Avenue will raise approximately $35,000 additional for the general fund and approximately $12,000 for the beach refurbishment account. This is to help offset the cost of operating and servicing the kiosks, which have increased since they were installed in 2017. Additionally, inflation has increased the cost of materials and services, and the parking fees since the kiosks were installed have been $1 per hour on Lakeside Avenue and $2 per hour on Endicott Rock Park.
Mr. Mayor, I just saw an error that I'd like you to point out to the council under the fiscal impact, and I apologize for not catching this. Under the fiscal impact, the $35,000.
25, right?
No, the $35,000 increase was under the original proposal to go up 25 cents an hour. So now that we're going up an additional proposed 75 cents an hour, we think that number will probably be getting, let's just put 125,000 there to be on the conservative side.
So Public Works estimates that the increase of fees on Lakeside Avenue will raise approximately $125,000 additional for the general fund and approximately. Does the approximately 12,000 for the beach refurbishment account remain the same?
That's accurate, yes.
Okay, so Public Works now estimates that the increase of fees on Lakeside Avenue will raise approximately $125,000 additional for the general fund and approximately $12,000 for the beach refurbishment account. Okay, so we have a series of 3 motions. The first one is to move to waive a reading of this ordinance in its entirety and to move by title only, so made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Second motion, looking to move to approve a second reading of ordinance 2022-20 221, amending City Code Chapter 221, Vehicles and Traffic regarding increasing the parking fees on Lakeside Avenue and at Endicott Rock Park. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion on this motion? Counselor Lippman.
I just want to confirm with the clerk that the paragraph that said that we voted is accurate. I'm not sure I have that same recollection. If the minutes document that, then I would agree.
Which paragraph are you looking at?
At the city council meeting of April 25th,
Yep.
2022, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Sorry to speak over you.
Just want to make sure that we have a clean record here.
So under the motion, it was Counselor Felch made the motion to amend the code and increase the parking fees to $2 an hour on Lakeside Ave and $2.50 at Endicott Rock Park and leave the amount that goes in the general fund. Seconded by Counselor Lippman. There was no discussion and the motion passed with all in favor.
Okay. Just want to make sure it was.
So we are on the second motion here. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Lippman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes. With 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And the last motion would be looking to move to approve ordinance 2022-221, amending City Code Chapter 221, Vehicles and Traffic regarding increasing the parking fees on Lakeside Avenue and at Endicott Rock Park. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Cheney.
I would just like to point out that contrary to reports, the Weirs Action Committee expressed no opposition to this increase. And in fact, I was at the meeting, they voted unanimously to support the city council in this matter.
Thank you, Counselor Cheney. There's no further discussion or questions. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Lippman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. And I'd like to adjourn the city council meeting of May 9th, 2022 at 8:08 PM.